For 17 years, nobody caught him. Not the SEC, not the auditors, not the banks, not the sophisticated hedge funds and institutional investors who trusted him with billions. Bernie Madoff ran the largest Ponzi scheme in the history of financial markets, directly under the nose of every regulator and compliance system that existed. And he did it from the 17th floor of a building in Midtown Manhattan, where his legitimate business operated just floors above the fraud. By the time it collapsed in December 2008, $64.8 billion had vanished. Thousands of victims lost everything. And the man who ran it had not made a single legitimate trade for his clients in at least 17 years. This is Ledger and Crime. And this is the Bernie Madoff story. Bernard Lawrence Madoff was born in Queens, New York in 1938. He was not an outsider who talked his way into the financial establishment. He was the financial establishment. He founded Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities in 1960 with $5,000 he had saved from working as a lifeguard and installing sprinkler systems. Over the following decades, he built it into one of the most respected firms on Wall Street. His legitimate market-making business, which operated completely separately from the fraud, was genuinely successful. At one point, his firm was handling up to 10% of all trading volume on the New York Stock Exchange. He served as chairman of the NASDAQ Stock Exchange 3 times. He was on regulatory advisory committees. He was the person other people in finance called when they wanted to understand how markets worked. That legitimacy was not incidental to the fraud. It was the fraud's foundation. The investment advisory side of Madoff's business, the side that was entirely fabricated, operated on a strategy he called split-strike conversion. The pitch was simple and appealing. He would invest client money in a basket of large-cap stocks, hedge the positions using options contracts, and generate steady, consistent returns regardless of market conditions. The returns were not spectacular. They averaged around 10 to 12% annually. That modesty was part of the genius of the deception. Madoff was not promising to make his clients rich overnight. He was promising something far more seductive: stability. Consistent returns, year after year, in bull markets and bear markets alike. And that is precisely what should have raised every red flag in the book. From a financial compliance perspective, the split-strike conversion strategy Madoff described could not mathematically produce the results he was reporting. The options market he claimed to be using was not large enough to accommodate the volume of trades his fund would have required. His returns showed almost no correlation to broader market movements, which is statistically near impossible for a legitimate equity strategy of that size. His auditor was a 3-person accounting firm in a strip mall in suburban New York, a firm with no capacity to audit a multi-billion-dollar investment operation. He refused to provide online account access to clients. He refused to allow outside verification of his trading records. And he insisted on secrecy. Clients were discouraged from discussing their Madoff accounts publicly or mentioning him to other investors. Every one of those elements was a compliance red flag of the highest order. And yet, they went unaddressed for decades. The mechanism of the fraud itself was strikingly simple. Madoff was running a classic Ponzi structure. New investor money was used to pay the returns promised to existing investors. No actual trading occurred. The 17th floor of his Midtown office building contained a team of employees whose entire job was to fabricate trading records, generating fake confirmations, fake account statements, and fake transaction histories that made the fiction look entirely real. They used an IBM AS/400 computer system to generate backdated trades, selecting securities and prices from historical records to make the reported returns plausible. Clients received monthly statements showing a portfolio of real stocks at real historical prices, none of which were ever actually purchased. The audacity of the operation was extraordinary. Madoff was simultaneously a respected regulatory figure advising the SEC on market structure while running a fraud that the SEC repeatedly failed to detect despite multiple direct warnings. Harry Markopolos was a financial analyst and forensic accountant who became one of the most important figures in the Madoff story. In 2000, 8 years before the collapse, Markopolos submitted a detailed report to the SEC, concluding that Madoff's returns were mathematically impossible and that the most likely explanation was fraud. He titled his submission, "The World's Largest Hedge Fund is a Fraud." The SEC investigated and found nothing. Markopolos resubmitted his analysis in 2001, 2005, and 2008, each time with more detailed evidence. Each time, the SEC failed to act. The SEC's failure in the Madoff case became one of the most significant regulatory scandals in American financial history. An internal investigation later found that the agency had received 6 substantive complaints about Madoff between 1992 and 2008 and had conducted 2 examinations and 3 investigations, none of which uncovered the fraud. Investigators later concluded that the examiners had been misled by Madoff's confident explanations, had failed to verify his trading records independently, and had been deferential to his reputation and status in the industry. By 2008, the Ponzi scheme had been running for at least 17 years. Madoff had accumulated between $17 billion and $20 billion in actual client deposits. The $64.8 billion figure represented the fabricated account balances, what clients believed they had, including all the fictitious returns that had never actually been earned. The collapse came not from regulatory detection, but from the 2008 financial crisis. As markets crashed in the fall of 2008, Madoff's clients began requesting redemptions. The requests quickly exceeded the cash available. In early December 2008, Madoff told his sons Andrew and Mark that the investment advisory business was a fraud. His sons contacted a lawyer who advised them to go to federal authorities. On December 10, 2008, Madoff was arrested by FBI agents at his Manhattan apartment. He was 70 years old. The human cost was devastating. Charities and foundations were wiped out overnight. The Elie Wiesel Foundation for Humanity lost its entire $15 million endowment. Retirees discovered they had nothing. The fraud disproportionately affected the Jewish community. Madoff had built much of his client base through Jewish philanthropic and social networks, and the betrayal of that trust added a layer of communal devastation to the financial losses. Irving Picard, the court-appointed trustee, spent years pursuing Madoff's associates, and by 2023 had recovered and distributed over $14 billion to victims. Remarkable, but still a fraction of what was lost. Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal felonies in March 2009 and was sentenced to 150 years in federal prison. His son Mark died by suicide in December 2010. His other son Andrew died of cancer in 2014. Bernie Madoff died in federal prison in April 2021 at the age of 82. The compliance lessons from Madoff are clear. Reputation and status are not substitutes for independent verification. Regulatory capture is a systemic vulnerability. Consistent returns, uncorrelated to market conditions, an auditor with no capacity to verify accounts, secrecy around trading records, a strategy the options market could not physically support. These were all visible. The fraud was not invisible. It was hiding in plain sight behind a wall of reputation, trust, and deference. Protect yourself by demanding verification, not trust. The inability or unwillingness to provide independent third-party verification of performance is the most important warning sign that exists. Subscribe to Ledger & Crime for new financial crime cases every week, because the criminals never stop, and neither do we. Next week, we are covering one of the most brazen insider trading cases the SEC has ever prosecuted, and the paper trail that brought it all down. You will not want to miss